early online next week, and you will be receiving an email to the link of the recording. For everyone here, the National Reentry Resource Center is in its 6th year, and it was been established by the Second Chance Act to provide education, training, and technical assistance to states, territories, tribes, local governments, service providers, and nonprofit organizations working on prisoner reentry. The National Reentry Resource Center is a part of the Council of State Governments Justice Center, and it runs in partnership with the Bureau of Justice Assistance, U.S. Department of Justice. CSG Justice Center is a national nonprofit association of state government officials, and we engage all 3 branches of state government, and we work to provide practical advice informed by best available evidence in the areas of corrections, courts, justice reinvestment, law enforcement, mental health, reentry, substance abuse, and youth issues. The National Reentry Resource Center has been working with over 600 Second Chance Act grantees since we started in 2009, and we provide individualized technical and targeted technical assistance and training and distance learning to support grantees, as well as supporting practitioners in the field. If you aren't already, please register for our newsletter at csgjusticecenter.org/subscribe. Second Chance Act is a federal legislation that governs and funds the work that we all do here. So this is public law that was signed into law in April 2008, and it authorizes grants to state, local, and tribal governments and nonprofits to support programs, policies, and practices that reduce recidivism, like the solicitation we are talking about today. So just to give you a heads up about our wonderful guest speakers today, we have Bethea, who is the Policy Advisor for Corrections at the U.S. Department of Justice's Bureau of Justice Assistance. Previously, Mr. Bethea worked as the Director for Program Operations and Policy at the New York City Department of Correction, where he managed external relationships with community-based organizations and research institutions and developed policy, curriculum, and identified best practice and programmatic initiatives for adolescents and young adults in custody. Prior to this, he has served as legal coordinator, and he started his time in criminal justice working as an analyst for the New York City Police Department. Nicole Jarrett works on the Criminal Justice Mental Health Consensus Project team here at Council of State Governments Justice Center and is a senior policy analyst. She works heavily on the center's health-related efforts as well as our mentoring efforts here as being the lead on our mentoring technical assistance. Prior to joining CSG Justice Center, Dr. Jarrett served as Director of Health Policy Research at National Medical Association, and she was a research and evaluation consultant to the Congressional Black Caucus Foundation and Director of Community Health Policy for Baltimore City Health Department. She's received her BS from Rutgers and her PhD from Johns Hopkins. We're very excited to have them both here today to talk about this really wonderful solicitation to support services that utilize mentors for the reentry population. Great, so this is our agenda. We'll be going over the grant program overview, the requirements, expectations, application, resources, and contacts.
Thank you, Angela. So I want to thank everyone for joining us. We're going to begin discussing the comprehensive community-based adult reentry program utilizing mentors. This solicitation was released on April 15th, 2015, and the applications are due on June 11th of 2015. The solicitation is available at the following website that you see on the particular program. And if you're unable to view it, you can always look it up by looking up Bureau of Justice Assistance and looking up solicitations. Next slide, please. The goals and objectives. The goal is to promote more effective and successful reentry for offenders through the establishment and maintenance of pre- and post-release mentoring relationships. The objectives are to establish or improve the administration of mentoring programs, including expanding mentoring strategies and program design, enhancing and improving the organizational capacity, system efficiency, and cost effectiveness of mentoring programs, improving training programs and supports for mentors, and improving outcomes for offenders and mentoring programs.
Thank you, Andre. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the eligibility requirements. Applicants must be nonprofit organizations, including tribal nonprofit organizations, who have experience in providing comprehensive evidence-based reentry services and federally recognized Indian tribes. While nonprofit is not solely defined as having a 501c3 status, it is up to the applicant to provide sufficient information that confirms that they are a nonprofit organization. This solicitation provides funding for adult mentoring, reentry projects, but for more information on juvenile-related funding opportunities, please visit OJJDP's website at www.ojjdp.gov. So how does this solicitation differ from previous SCA mentoring solicitations? And when we say previous, we're really referring to solicitations prior to last year, which really represented a significant shift in the mentoring, reentry mentoring awards. So the awards are larger than they used to be. And so we're looking at project periods of 36 months and funding to up to $1 million for each grant award. They also are larger than they used to be, but smaller than last year. So the minimum requirement is that programs commit to serving at least 150 individuals over the 36-month award period. Grantees must also commit to providing a comprehensive range of reentry services that align with the individual's risk of recidivating as well as their reentry needs. And applicants must also demonstrate through an MOA or an MOU that they will work collaboratively with the correctional agency and facility in which the applicant proposes to work. Applicants must define a target population for their project, and you have some flexibility there. The person must be an adult convicted and imprisoned in a state, local prison or jail. But in terms of further eligibility for your program, you may set criteria around an individual's age, around their gender. We have programs, current grantees that serve only women, or we have programs that have a focus on young men. And so you have some flexibility there. You may want to choose to target a specific community, individuals who are returning to a specific community or housed in a specific facility. Applicants must also identify the number of participants they intend to serve and demonstrate that they will be able to reach that target. So in order to do that, you'll need to know that there is a sufficient number of people who meet your eligibility requirements that will be released during that project period. While there's room to define your target population, participants must be at a moderate to high risk of reoffending, as defined by an empirically validated risk assessment instrument. For federally recognized Indian tribes, individuals may be housed in a tribal, regional, county, or local jail pursuant to state or tribal law. Some specific requirements. For your program, there must be pre- and post-release services. So while the individual is still incarcerated pre-release, they should be receiving services, as well as through their transition back to the community and post-release. It's very important to establish a collaborative relationship with the correctional agency and with specific facility or facilities in which the applicant proposes to work. Transitional services to assist in the integration of offenders into the community is also one of the expectations, and applicants are expected to deliver and broker the provision of transitional services as well. It's important to plan and set a timeline for recruiting mentors. We know that this takes a significant period of time to do. That's part of the reason why the applicants moved from, the solicitation was from 2 years to 3 years. Be really clear about the number of mentors that you plan to recruit, and listing community partners that you plan to engage with to help with that recruitment. To adequately prepare your mentors, they must be sufficiently trained in a number of topics. The initial pre-service training and the ongoing in-service training curricula should cover at minimum criminal justice system as a whole. What does it mean to be in the criminal justice system and what the reentry process looks like, relevant governing policies for your program, as well as the correctional agency facilities in which individuals are housed. Spend some time thinking about interpersonal communication skills, victim-related issues, available transitional services in the community, ethical standards and the nature of the mentor-mentee relationship. You're very clear about what your boundaries are, and also spend time thinking about and sharing with your mentors how they may be safe and how to make sure the mentoring relationship is safe. Plan for tracking participant outcomes for at least 12 months following release and obtaining information about recidivism from the relevant corrections and/or supervision agencies. And you must provide a baseline recidivism rate for the proposed target population. Priority consideration will be given to applicants that provide for an independent evaluation of the project, which, to the maximum extent feasible, should include random assignment or a control group. The awards under this program will be made for a period of 36 months, as we explained earlier, with the possibility of a no-cost extension. Contingent upon the availability of funds, the number of offenders projected to be served should be at a minimum 150, and the award amount will be up to $1 million. BJ estimates that seven awards will be made. Now I'll turn it back over to Andre. Sorry. Yes, Andre?
Thank you, Nicole. So we want to go into the selection criteria. I just want to remind everyone that BJA is looking to award 7 awards. This will be highly competitive as we anticipate a great load of applicants. Selection criteria. We're going to look at the statement of the problem, which is 15%, program design and implementation, which is 35%, capabilities and competencies, 25%, impact, outcomes, evaluation, and sustainment, and plan for collecting the data required for the solicitation's performance measures, 15%, the budget, 10%. Next slide. Now we're going to examine each one of the areas in the selection criteria, starting off with the statement of the problem. Describe the problem with individuals returning to the community. Provide a baseline recidivism rate for the proposed target population, including documentation to support the development of the rate. Indicate the jurisdiction or tribal community to be served. Summarize the basic components of the state, local, or tribal reentry initiative as currently being implemented. Next. Describe the existing continuum or menu of services, that's pre and post-release, that are available to offenders corresponding to the individual's risk and need assessment. For example, the CBT, the cognitive behavioral therapy, life skills including financial literature and training, education for those persons who are in need of mental health and substance abuse treatment, family counseling, transitional links and permanent housing links, ongoing offender behavior assessments, data collection and analysis for future efforts. Describe how the mentoring program proposed in the project application will interface with the existing reentry process. Next. Describe the project implementation plan, including the process for identifying potential mentees and mentors, mentor training curriculum components, and delivery and any continual mentor professional development opportunities and supports that will be provided. How will mentors and mentees be matched? And what are your intended ratio to match the mentors to the mentees? Identify the number of mentors who will be recruited, the timeline for recruiting mentors, and list of the community partners to engage in recruiting the mentors. Describe how the proposed project will provide both pre- and post-release services that include connecting mentors and mentees prior to release from the correctional facility through transition back to the community and post-release. Next, describe the transitional services in addition to mentoring that will be provided to assist in the reintegration of the offenders into the community. Describe the training curriculum that will be provided to all mentors. Describe how the project incorporates effective correctional practices. You will see this inside of the Appendix 1 of the solicitation. Describe how the project could be broadly replicated if demonstrated to be effective. We're looking for sustainability here. Describe how any priority considerations specified on page 8 of the solicitation have been met. Next, we want to go into the next section, which is capabilities and competencies. Describe the organizational structure, capabilities, and competencies of the applicant. Include historical perspective on how the organization is positioned to provide mentoring and transitional services throughout the entire reentry process. Describe the management structure and the staffing of the project, identifying the agency responsible for the project and the grant coordinator. The management and organizational structure should match the staff necessary to accomplish the tasks outlined in the project implementation plan. BJA strongly encourages applicants to hire a full-time coordinator with a document history of working with offenders. We also want you to discuss the role of local government agencies, other nonprofit organizations, and community stakeholders that will collaborate on the project implementation. Next, we want to look at the impact outcomes, evaluation, and sustainment, and plan for collecting the data required for performance measures. In this portion, we need you to identify the goals and objectives for program development, implementation, and outcomes. Describe how performance will be documented, monitored, and evaluated, and identify the impact of each strategy once implemented. Outline what data and information will be collected and describe how evaluation and collaborative partnerships will be leveraged to build long-term support and resources for the program. Describe the process for assessing the project's effectiveness. You will see this within the solicitation on page 15 where it talks about performance measurements. Including the strategy, the methodology for tracking offenders assigned to the project for as long as they are actively involved. Next, discuss the role of the state or local corrections department, community correction agencies, and/or local jail systems in ensuring successful reentry of offenders into their communities. Discuss how services provided under this project will be integrated into the overall reentry strategy of the facility housing the target population. Provide a plan for tracking participant outcomes for at least 12 months following release, and describe the process for obtaining information about recidivism from the relevant corrections and/or supervision agencies. Next, now we're going to discuss the budget. First things first, there is no match requirement under this solicitation. Provide a proposed budget and budget narrative that are cost-effective, complete, and allowable. Include an appropriate % of the total grant award for research, data collection, performance measurement, and performance assessment. Lastly, applicants must budget funding to travel to the DOJ's sponsored grant meetings. Applicants should estimate the cost of travel and accommodations for 3 staff to attend a three-day meeting in Washington, D.C. Next up, we're going to discuss the performance measures. A preliminary list of performance measures for this program is included in the solicitation. Please note that the performance measures included in the solicitation are examples taken from a complete list of measures which can be viewed at bjasperformancetools.org. The entire website is available on the solicitation, within the solicitation. Applicants should also be aware that the required performance measures may change prior to the start of the award period. Training regarding BJA's performance measurement tool, also known as PMT, which grantees are required to use to submit their data, will be available to successful applicants. Now we want to discuss the basic minimum requirements. Applicants should be aware that applications that are determined to be non-responsive to the scope of the solicitation or that do not include the application's elements that BJA has designated by the BJA to be critical will neither proceed to peer review nor receive further consideration. Therefore, BJA has designated the following application elements as critical. You need a project abstract, a program narrative, a budget detail worksheet, and budget narrative. Applicants may combine the budget detail worksheet and budget narrative in one document. However, if an applicant submits only one document, it must contain both narrative and detailed information. A memorandum of agreement, a MOA. A project timeline. Position descriptions for key positions and resumes for personnel in those positions, including research partners. A memoranda of agreement from all key partners, including correctional agencies. And disclosure of pending applications. That means all applications for federally funded assistance that would support the same project and cover the same cost items proposed in this application include both direct applications for federal funding, like this one, and indirect applications, so meaning applications to state agencies for subawards. Include all pending applications submitted within the past 12 months. See an example on page 18 of the solicitation. Applicants that do not have pending applications must include a statement to this effect. And lastly, contact information. Technical assistance contact information. For technical assistance with submitting the application, contact the grants.gov customer support hotline at 1-800-518-4726 or via email to support@grants.gov. Solicitation contact information. For assistance with requirements of the solicitation, contact the National Criminal Justice Reference Service, the NCJRS Response Center, at 1-800-851-3420 or via email at responsecenter@ncjrs.gov. I'm handing it back over to you, Nicole.
Okay, thank you, Andre. So that's a lot of information, and you probably are thinking about resources, and there are a number of resources out there. Just wanted to highlight a few things right now. Public-private ventures, mentoring former prisoners, a guide for reentry programs is something that past grantees have found useful. They provide some practical information around designing a mentoring program, thinking through policies and procedures and recruitment. You don't have to be wedded to what they have there. It's just a resource. We've already stressed that one of the outcomes is we're looking at a reduction in recidivism. And so understanding some evidence-based programs and what's out there, we really suggest that you check out Office of Justice Programs, crimesolutions.gov, as well as our What Works in Reentry Clearinghouse. That particular site does a really good job in sifting through the research on what works, and so please use that as a resource as you put together your application. And Andre already covered some important contacts for you all, grants.gov, as well as the National Criminal Justice Reference Service. Right now, I'll turn it over to Angela for questions and answers.
Thank you very much to both of you for your great presentations. We have many questions from our 232 attendees and probably even more that are going to be piling through. So I'm going to get it started and then we can kind of go from there. First off, these are questions for Andre that I'm going to start off with. Andre, can you tell us, or do you know about last funding round, what the number of applications, how many were received and how many were awarded? People are curious about what the level of competition is.
Sure, Angela. I'm glad that you asked that important question. I'm looking at the fact sheet right now, and fiscal year 14, for this particular grant, we received 138 applications. Of the 138 applications, I'm looking and I'm seeing that 7 awards were made.
Great, thank you. Second question, Andre, for you. As far as these are questions regarding what should be provided by applicants. Do they need to submit with their proposal an MOU with the correctional agency that they're going to be working with, or do they need to submit a general MOU that they have with, let's say, the broader prison department? So can MOUs with individual prisons or jails be okay, or should they be looking to submit MOUs required or made with the broader state or prison departments?
Thanks, Angela. It is my suggestion that you submit an MOU with the larger correction division. It'll only be helpful, and I want to follow that up by saying that you should submit a memorandum of understanding with any key stakeholders, albeit another nonprofit community-based organization, or even on the post-release side, maybe you have linkage with a housing group or unit. It only provides greater sustainability and shows that your actual application and your proposal has a greater reach. So we encourage MOUs with each entity that's going to play a role in what you're proposing.
Great, thank you. Another question we have regarding the consideration for evaluation of the project. Can you elaborate? This could be for Andre or Nicole. We could start with Andre and Nicole if you'd like to add. That would be great. Could you elaborate on what do you mean by random assignment as far as evaluations?
Thanks, Angela. I think I'll pass that one on to Nicole. Nicole, would you mind?
No problem. And we actually have a couple of programs that are randomly assigning participants to control groups. And so what that means is that once you identify eligible participants, well, there's 2 different processes. One process is with the grantees really isolating the mentoring services from the other transitional services. So we have a couple of programs that once they've identified someone who is eligible for their program, they are randomly assigned a mentor. We have other programs that have a broader random assignment in which they look at a similar population, a population that would be eligible for their services, but let's say they may, they're not randomly selected to participate in their program. Some are more a natural occurring naturally occurring evaluation. And so, for example, if you are serving a population that's returning to a particular community, you may have a matched sample that would have been eligible for your services, but are not because they're returning to another community. Again, it's important that that community be similar and they may be receiving services at another organization. And so it gets a little bit in the weeds, and what I really recommend, if you don't have a research and evaluation background, that you work with someone who does. But if you are familiar with random assignment, that's exactly what this is referring to. It is more intense, but as you know, in terms of evaluation, that's the gold standard. And so there are some resources out there, but again, really encourage you to talk with an evaluator as you set up your design so that when you're proposing what you'll do for evaluation, you don't commit to something that you won't be able to accomplish because, again, random assignment is a little bit more labor intensive and you need to have the appropriate resources in place. I hope that helps.
Thanks, Nicole, and thank you, Andre. A couple of questions regarding some of the allowable costs. So we have some folks who are asking, are job readiness training or skills certification trainings, are those allowable costs that could be funded during pre-release planning for people served under this grant? Andre, do you have, if you could chime in on that, as far as our job training, job readiness, or skills certification training, are they allowable costs in this grant?
Thank you, Angela. The BJA has several solicitations that are not mentoring type solicitations that are geared towards job skills training. This particular solicitation is regarding mentoring, and while we won't say that it's not an allowable cost, what I will say is that you have to be mindful that if the solicitation as it reads is dealing with mentoring, then you want to stick with the criteria that we laid out in the solicitation and through this particular webinar. So as far as job skills readiness, career tech, there are a plethora of solicitations that are, not just from the United States Department of Justice, but from other federal agencies that would probably speak best to the particular job readiness, skills training initiatives that are being asked about. This particular initiative is about mentoring, and it's a pre- and post-release criteria. So definitely read the solicitation, read the information that's available on the webinar, seek the assistance necessary through the particular National Criminal Justice Reference Services, as well as through support at grants.gov for additional assistance on what could be considered allowable expenditures under this grant.
Thank you, Andre. Related type of question, just as far as what is actually covered, or just for clarification of on target considerations. Regarding the target number of 150 people to be served, can you please let them know, is this 150 people to be served pre-release or post-release, or both?
In terms of the 150, remember the program is supposed to be pre- and post-release, so that encompasses both. And the persons who are going through this particular, through your particular mentoring initiative, coaching experience, 150 individuals pre- and post-release that they have done both components. Thank you.
Great, thank you. This is now a question about what types of nonprofits have applied for mentoring grants in the past. Nicole, I was thinking that you could answer this if you can give us a description of the different types of nonprofits that have qualified for mentoring grants and have been running mentoring programs funded by SCA. Could you describe them?
A wide variety. So we've had programs for nonprofit organizations that have primarily provide residential substance use services, and their mentors follow more of a peer recovery coach model. We work with organizations that really historically have a focus on connecting people to employment or transitional employment services. And so they've been awardees in the past. We have a number of organizations that are faith-based. And so it really is a variety of nonprofits. This grant track within SCA is fairly unique in the sense of, many of the other tracks really focus in on agencies, and it's nice to see this opportunity for nonprofit and community-based organizations because they do play an important role in reentry as well. So a wide variety from employment, faith-based, recovery-based services, programs that serve primarily homeless individuals, programs that serve families, focus on financial literacy, a wide variety of nonprofits.
Thank you. And just to be clear as well, this is an RFP for nonprofit agencies. Therefore, state correction departments, local correction departments are not, in fact, eligible to apply for this. Correct, right, Andre? That's a question,
correct.
too.
That is correct. That is correct. This particular initiative is only for the nonprofit community-based organizations. It is not for the state or local jurisdictions who are otherwise known as government agencies.
Thank you. There's some questions about program structure that I'd love to have either of you be able to answer. One question is that we would like to know, someone has asked about whether or not there are recommended guidelines for the ratio of mentors to mentees. Is that a factor that BJA is looking for? And also, can mentors be paid using SCA funds?
So I'll start it off, Nicole, and then you can finish it. I just want to say that there is no specific ratio of mentors to mentees that BJA is looking for. I think that we're looking for you in building your proposal and your project design to state your particular ratio and base it on the target population, the areas that your clientele are going to be returning to, the communities that they're going to be returning to, the persons that you have selected to be mentors, and how you will make that fit between mentor and mentee. So we're looking for you to describe that process and not that we have a number in mind here at BJA. Nicole?
Yeah, and one of the things to keep in mind, many programs rely only on the one-to-one individual mentoring approach, but it is okay to use the group model. And one of the things that you will want to clarify with the corrections facility that you're working with is how many individuals, mentors, do you propose will be coming in to provide pre-release services. So the model of mentoring that you do pre-release, that ratio may be different than the ratio or the mentoring model that you use post-release. Some programs use one-on-one in both. Some do a mixture of group and one-on-one in pre-release or just group in pre-release, and post-release do one-on-one and group. There's a lot of variety, and so it would be helpful for you to be very clear about exactly what you're proposing, not only in your application, but when you're designing that MOU or MOA, to be very clear about not only the number of the outreach that you want to do, the in-reach that you're going to do, who's eligible for the program, but have that conversation about clearance for volunteers.
Thanks, Nicole. Related to program model questions, we have a question from someone who is asking, we are planning to add a mentoring component to reentry services provided to men at a reentry center. We plan to add females in the next year and then use year one information to gather baseline data, but that year one information will be based on men. Would that be okay? Nicole, could you answer that question? They want to use baseline data collected on men served during year one to kind of compare that to females served in year two. Is that okay?
I think in terms of demonstrating, I don't think I understand this full question, in terms of demonstrating the ability to recruit the number of women for the new program? I'm not sure. I'm sorry. I'm not sure what the.
Sure. They're going to use baseline data collected on the men that are served in the program from the first year and use that baseline data to determine recidivism rate.
To determine the baseline recidivism rate.
Right. And if they use females for the second year, can they use that same baseline recidivism rate that they determined for the year one men? Basically saying, can they compare recidivism rates for year two if the year two population differs from year one?
And this is in regard to demonstrating their program, or the baseline recidivism rate for the population in their jurisdiction? For the
population for the program.
And the reason why it's a little bit more complicated, because the baseline recidivism rate in their jurisdiction may be different for men and women. So I'm not sure if looking at that data is the most accurate thing to do. So it would be helpful if they are able to contact the facility to understand what the baseline recidivism rate is for women being released from that particular facility and returning to the particular jurisdiction that they hope to serve. Not sure if I answered that question. I did want to take a step back, because I don't think we answered part two of that last question, which was whether or not it's okay to pay mentors. And I don't know if, Andre, if you had any guidance on that.
Certainly, Nicole. Well, I will say that I'm in a precarious situation as being the representative from BJA, and as questions come that are general about the solicitation, it's crucial that I don't weigh in on questions that help you with your proposal. So I would suggest that in terms of whether or not you pay a mentor, that is not something that I can render a selection as the person who plays a pivotal role in the selection process. We must be careful on how we respond to particular questions that deal with the building and the construction of proposals versus questions about the solicitation.
Okay, no problem. I have a question that I think is more straightforward. The 3 DOJ-sponsored meetings, those 3 meetings, do they happen in 1 year, or is there 1 meeting per year? Andre, could you answer?
Yes, the BJA Second Chance Act meeting happens, in most cases, it happens once a year. However, if there is a chance or an opportunity for you, the grantee, if you become a grantee, to receive intensive training, then we will send a letter and you know, CSG, the National Reentry Resource Center, will reach out to you and we'll discuss it further if you're, you know, coming to a separate meeting. But under normal circumstances, it's fair to say that there's usually 1 meeting, 3-day meeting, and we're looking for 3 persons from each particular grantee to represent that grantee at the national conference.
Great, thank you. So yes, there's 1 meeting a year, and these are 3-year grants, so therefore 3 meetings overall. Thank you so much. Andre, another question for you. Perhaps may have come from a current grantee or prior grantee. Folks are asking if they have been awarded one of the 7 mentoring grants last year, are they eligible to receive an award again? So if they received a grant in FY14, should they apply and for award for FY15?
Well, I think the proper response would be that we do not dissuade you from applying. Nicole, during her presentation on the webinar, definitely discussed in detail the differences between the 2 solicitations, between fiscal year 14 as well as the current solicitation that's out. If you're proposing something different, if you're saying that you're going to do something different, if you're proposing a program that's similar to what the current solicitation reads, we're not here to, you know, discourage applicants from seeking assistance, because we know that this is a competitive process, and by all means, if a person, you know, if a particular organization needs funding for their particular initiative, then they should, by all means, apply for this particular solicitation. So we're not going to dissuade anyone from applying, but we will say that they, as Nicole laid out earlier in the webinar, there are slight differences in terms of what's available in terms of the programming and the proposals that they're looking for, and more importantly, the numbers that are looking to be the minimum numbers that must be met in order to fulfill the promises of this particular solicitation. So.
Okay, great. I have a question about, back to MOUs, so apologies on that, but someone has asked, is a letter of support sufficient to demonstrate linkage, or do they need to submit a memorandum of understanding or a memorandum of agreement?
Yeah, that's a great question. We here at BJA encourage memorandum of understandings. The letter of support is different in the sense that the memorandum of understanding this would be necessary for key stakeholders in the particular proposal. So if a particular organization is written into your proposal and they're playing a pivotal role or some role, then it behooves you as the applicant to have a memorandum of understanding that discusses the relationship between you and the particular key stakeholder slash sub-grantee. Great,
thank you. Next question in regards to location. So folks are asking, is their geographic location going to be consideration as far as being able to identify what areas are places more in need? For example, if a program has received funding in a specific city last year, are applicants from the same city less likely to be awarded funding? Or if a project is in an area that has no mentoring funding, is that project more likely to be an area that is more in need or considered differently? So to what extent does location, geographic location of projects impact who will get the award?
Well, now, considering that you just submit a proposal, we must understand that this particular process of selecting grantees or selecting persons or groups to be awarded out of a grant is very competitive, and that we go through a peer review process. I think that you can look on bja.gov on the website that will explain in detail what exactly happens in peer review. However, it will not speak to anything that has to do with regional selection over other regions or the such. We must be understanding that it goes through a rigorous peer review process, and that all applications will be read and will be tiered as appropriated by the peer review process.
Thank you. The question regarding that I think Nicole could hopefully answer. Folks are asking, this is relating to their program model, but what kind of training programs have been used or funded for in order to train mentors working with the population? And if so, if there are either training programs that you know of, or if there are other ways to help improve the way that mentors build relationships with people that are working in prisons.
I really don't have a lot to say about one set curricula. You know, prior awardees have really designed something that really suits their population. And so thinking about, and there is a long list in the solicitation of what should be included in the curricula, you know, thinking about all of those things, what's the best approach to make sure that each one of those elements is adequately covered. But I don't have a list of the top 5 training or something like that to provide.
Thank you, Nicole. Another question that came related to mentor training is that something that should be confirmed and ready to go at the inception of a grant period, or can it be developed as part of the process? I'm curious, Nicole, from your end, working as a technical assistance provider, to what extent you've seen mentoring grantees use funding or use the experience that they're having through the grant in order to develop training materials or training curriculum?
I would say most of the programs that we've worked with, they use the planning period to help develop their training or solidify their training, thinking about how to evaluate, thinking about who should be part of the training, thinking about who should be the lead facilitators of those training, what time those trainings should occur, and as indicated in the solicitations, it's a pre-service training, but then this ongoing in-service training to think about as well.
Great, thank you so much. There are other specific questions that are very much related to the solicitation process, and to the extent that I believe we should continue to refer folks to the application submission technical assistance line for more questions, as well as then CJRS Response Center. We also, as Nicole has mentioned, we encourage you all to look at the What Works in Reentry Clearinghouse and also resources at CSG Justice Center for more tools to help you in your preparation of your proposals. But at this point, I'd like to say thank you very much to our presenters for their work and for their talking points and for answering these questions. We are really excited for folks in the field to be able to apply to this grant. track and hope that this has helped you in developing your proposal. Thank you very much, and this recording will be available very shortly through the National Reentry Resource Center. Goodbye.